Hi everyone, welcome to the latest edition of Liquidware Chats. On this episode, I sit down with Jim Airdo. Jim is Senior Vice President of Alliances at IGEL. We first talk about Jim's career and how he started out as the first SE at Citrix. And he was in EUC before it was even called EUC. We then talk about his career all the way up to his current role at IGEL. We also look at Liquidware and IGEL's long-standing partnership, which goes back over 10 years. We talk about what we've done in the past and what will be coming in the future. We then look at some of the latest features from IGEL, such as their Hypervisor. And then to finish, we look at how AI is impacting EUC. Enjoy the episode. Thanks. Welcome to the latest episode of Liquidware Chats. Today, I have Jim Airdo, who is the Senior Vice President of Alliances at IGEL. Jim, how are you doing?
Hey, James. I'm doing great today. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this. It's been a while since we've talked.
It has. So, Jim, just to start out, I was looking into yourself while I was, because yes, we work together, but I was doing a bit of research and I found out that you were the first systems engineer at Citrix. I knew you had been in EUC for a very long time, but I wasn't aware of that fact. That's a pretty cool thing to have.
Yeah, I guess it depends on your perspective. Yes, it is a cool title. It is looking back very very favorable thing that had happened, right? But during that time, I didn't know in the thick of it what was happening. But yes, so I started at Citrix in 1993. They were pretty small company at the time. There were 42 people there. And the way I got exposed to Citrix was through a friend who was an SE at Compaq Computer, believe it or not, back in the day. I was doing a project for Arthur Anderson Consulting in downtown Chicago, where I'm from. And we were wrapping up this project with Compaq servers and Novell NetWare stuff. And he was like, hey, what's your next project here? And I'm, well, we got to figure out a way for the administrators here to access these servers, remotely. And this is back when you had, dial-up modems and carbon copy and reach out and those sorts of software. And he was like, hey, have you heard of this company Citrix? No, what is Citrix? So he told me a little bit about it. And like a week later, I got a phone call from Citrix. And then a week later, they showed up in Chicago and wanted to see what we were doing, gave us a demo. And I was watching the demo and I was just mesmerized and intrigued by the technology. So it was really the technology that I thought was very cool that drew me in. And we started deploying Citrix. And 6 months in, I was like, hey, if you guys ever open an office here in Chicago, I'd love to join you. Not knowing anything about the company, really, like size or revenue or how many people. And I got a call 6 months later or so around, hey, we've got an opening, so you fast forward a little bit, I was offered the job, but then they had to rescind the offer because they missed their number and it was tiny, and I ended up going to work for them. It was supposed to be January of 93 and it got pushed out till July. So I had to wait 6 months, but yeah, it was very interesting times back then to see the company and to see it now.
Yeah, and when you first joined Citrix, there, EUC was not a term. It was, as I think as we talked prior to the podcast, it was like server-based computing. So it was like a different time. And before we had this massive ecosystem that we now have, it was very, very niche.
Very niche. And yeah, you're absolutely right. And we didn't really have the servers that we have today. Everything was big box servers, right? 486 and Pentium chips, right? The Xeon wasn't even around back then. And we were working with, hardware vendors to get the biggest bang for the buck, try to get the most users on a CPU, right? That's what Citrix's claim to fame was. When it first started, it was 10-to-1 instead of 1-to-1 when you were dialing it, right? And then it went to 25 and 30 and 50 and hundreds, and then server pooling and server farms. So to see that whole sort of architecture, get built out from the groundswell of interest was really, really cool. The other really cool thing was there was really nobody else doing what Citrix was doing for several years, right? They had a stranglehold on on that multi-user computing, if you will. And I think the terminology that we used to use in a sales cycle as an SE was, we've got this multi-win technology, is what we called the multi-userization, if you will, of the CPU and the users. And what was really cool was just the people that I had met at Citrix. I'd always been on the reseller or channel side of the business, and moving to Citrix was a little scary because I used to have a lot of my worth was around knowing all these different technologies, right? Compaq, Novell, 3Com, Cisco, and leaving that and just being an expert in one was a little scary. But then when I got onto the manufacturing side of the business, it's like I've never gone back, right? The characters, the personalities that are there from an engineering point of view, or product or market, it was just a really good experience for me. A lot of these people now are friends. They're friends for life, and past and present, right? Like many folks just mentored me into what I was doing there. I have to thank several people. I stood on the shoulders of many people, and I've kind of carried that now to who I am mentoring in a quiet way, not in a very loud way, but just trying to walk by example.
Yeah, no, it's really cool that you were part of such a fundamental company in our kind of community. It's very cool to kind of learn and delve into that.
Yeah.
So next, I want to just talk to you about partnerships and how you go about partnering with companies. What's your kind of strategy around how you go to partner with companies?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really good question. And for me, where I'm at today around alliances and how I've morphed or evolved over time. You mentioned, I was an SE, a pure SE, working a region or a territory, to managing the SE team at Citrix globally, and then moving into more relationship sort of aspects of our business, right? Ran channels for a while at many different places, AppSense and so on, as you know. And then moving into alliances off of channels and working with the technology partners. So the partnering aspect to me is extremely important. It's extremely critical, especially in EUC, right? You have to have multiple vendors to have a viable solution. Not one vendor does everything anymore, like it was back in the 80s, right? When everybody just used IBM, right? And IBM did everything. So, I think the most important thing, James, for me though, is integrity with the relationships. Having an integral, ethical, decisions and purpose. And the reason I say integrity and ethics is being here at IGEL, we're an operating system, so everyone is welcome, right? Because as an operating system, you don't really know what technology a potential customer is using, and you might need to partner with that other technology vendor in order to make the deal happen or the solution happen for that customer, right? So as you know, our IGEL Ready ecosystem, there's well over 100 technology partners in there, and many of them compete. And that's been the beauty, right? Is walking that fine line of knowing how and when to engage with certain partners and not engage with others. And I have to say something that I hate to use the word proud, but the thing I am most proud of, and I give a lot of credit to my team, is how we are able to bring all of our partner ecosystems together twice a year for our conference, right? So we'll have a room full of partners. There's 60, 80 people in there, and many of them are fierce competitors when they leave the room. But they come into that room and they're talking about what they do, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I suppose, yes, we are competitors, but yourself, like, we are a community as well, and it is all about relationships, because this is what because of where we are, it is very niche. We all know each other. You could be competitors one day, you could be colleagues the next day. So and it's happened. So I take that whole competitor thing. Yes, we're competing, but we're competing fairly, and it's in good faith. So, that's the way I look at it. And but I get what you mean about, yes, you could have the likes of us or Control up in the same room, and, but we, there's so many mutual people we all know from over the years, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, our little EUC community is unique. It's very large, but it is unique. Everybody knows one another. And
Well,
speaking of Stratodesk, right?
Yes.
Talking about competitors. Yeah.
Indeed. Yes. Big news quite recently. IGEL acquired Stratodesk. And I have to say, I was, when I first heard about this, I was a little bit shocked because it was, it just kind of came out of the blue from my point of view. I'm sure it was been going on for quite a while, but just kind of, I wanted to understand why, at this particular point in time, did IGEL feel that it was a good time to purchase Stratodesk?
Yeah, interesting. Great question, right? They're a very, very worthy, formidable competitor, right? We'd met them in the field many times. And as you said just a minute ago, we all know one another. We know Emmanuel for many years and their sales leadership for many years, right? And they've got a great product. They've got a great install base of customers, right? Is very attractive to IGEL. And as we want to grow our business and our revenue, right? It was just a perfect, match to do it, right? So we'd been speaking with Emmanuel on and off, even when you were here, James, if you recall, and it would heat up and die down and heat up and die down, right? But they've got great people on their team. They've got, like I said a minute ago, a really loyal customer base, and we're looking forward to migrating that customer base to IGEL OS. So, I would assume the next question would be the Stratodesk solutions, right? They're pretty much in maintenance mode right now, right? So we're not, all their customers that are running it, they're going to get fixes and patches, and we're going to maintain them so they can run their businesses, right? But the goal now is to get them onto IGEL OS, right? And we feel with our solution, it's a more modern solution. There's more depth to our solution. It's not just an endpoint OS, right? Where we've got our UMS and UMS as a service. We've got our preventative security model, our orchestration layer that I can talk about in a little bit, our adaptive secure desktop. So we're getting a bunch of great people, great engineers, great Linux engineers there as well that will help us even build out what we're trying to do. So yeah, we're really excited about this next stage with Stratodesk.
No, as I said, I think, you've given a good overview. And I suppose what can kind of Stratodesk customers expect? You've mentioned some of the things there about, more in-depth operating system, but I suppose they do get continuity because the same people are there as well that they've been dealing with as well. So true. That's right. Yes. Most of the Stratodesk people have stayed on. I think where there was a little bit of overlap, right? With certain departments, maybe not so, but yeah, the customers have all been contacted, right? They've all had a phone call, an email, a meeting set up where we've spoken to them about what's happening and how it's happening and why it's happening. We're going to honor their maintenance agreements, right? If they had a 3-year contract and they still have 2 years left, we're going to honor that for them. So it's not going to be anything that's going to be forced, if you will, right? It's going to be migrations over time at their pace, So, and I think what they can expect is, again, continuity, talking to the same people they spoke to before when they actually, maybe consummated the deal, right? As well as finding out more and more about, where IGEL can bring them into the future with our solution. Yeah. It's really interesting because for a while, and I don't know if you'll agree with this, but I thought that the kind of the thin client, thin OS market was stagnating a bit, but it's completely re-energized itself. Because we've seen just this year, we've seen Microsoft bring out a thin client, and we've seen Amazon bring out one, and so it seems like that market is really kind of re-energized, and there's a lot going on now with it.
Yeah, that's a great observation, and obviously we've seen this too, right? As you know, we exited hardware 3+ years ago. We're partnering with the larger hardware vendors, right? Lenovo, HP, LG. To deliver IGEL OS preloaded and so on and so forth. But then to see these other very large names, release what we call a thin client, right? I think from my perspective and where I sit, we believe that there's a void that they're trying to fill, right? And I think the void that they're trying to fill is that endpoint security concern that they have, right? the cloud's locked down, the data centers are locked down. There's tons of great tools that IT, personnel can use to lock down those environments, keep their databases safe, and segmenting networks and so on, and multi-cloud solutions. The endpoint still seems to be where the mistakes happen, right? And I think that's what they're trying to solve, right? With the Microsoft Link product, right? With the Amazon product. I think they're trying to solve that endpoint security breach and minimize, that attack surface, which is what we talk about all the time.
Yeah, and as you say, that's very much front and center in IGEL's messaging now, is the whole preventative security model. So it seems like you have kind of honed in on what is important to customers.
Yeah. I mean, Klaus Osterman, our CEO, he's been at the helm now for about 2 years. I think it'll be 2 years in July here, so right around the corner. And he devised this preventative security model around. It grew organically internally around this, what we call a 3-ring circus in a sense, right? But there's these 3 important rings, right? And, one of the rings that we are participating in and somewhat managing, right, is BDI, DaaS, browser-based application delivery, right? You're talking Omnissa, Microsoft, Citrix, Island with the browsers and so on. The other ring is all around identity access management, and user endpoint management, and the SASE vendors, right? The secure edge vendors, right? Like, we've got great innovations with like Trellix and Improbata, right? Zscaler and CrowdStrike and Palo Alto Networks, right? So we've built that segment in that ring. And then at the very top is the device itself, like we just mentioned, right? The hardware endpoint. So we feel like we've got these 3 rings somewhat cornered where, hey, if you put IGEL on that endpoint device in the first ring, right, and you're delivering a SaaS app, right, or a Citrix app on that endpoint using some of those partners we just mentioned, Zscaler, Liquidware, we reduce that attack surface by 95+% and can really give an IT, admin some confidence in, hey, that endpoint device is pretty secure, right? So, I'll leave it at that because there's more to say around that 3-ring circus, but we talked about partnering, and I mentioned a few names there that are really important, and they're important because customers were asking us, hey, I'm a Zscaler customer. I'm a Palo Alto Networks customer. I use the Island browser. How can you help me there? So as we pursue more technology vendors to join our ecosystem, you're going to continue to see those 3 rings get built out even more so.
Yeah, and you mentioned partnership. Obviously, Liquidware and IGEL have been partners since 2010, so we have a really long relationship. And as you talked about earlier, about it's all about relationships. It's really integral to how you build a partnership by having that relationship. And we've had a very stable one with yourselves. At Disrupt. Disrupt. It was Disrupt. We won the IGEL Ready Pioneer App of the Year for Stratosphere UX. So, we've always kind of had this kind of joint partnership, and it's not just from a marketing perspective. There's the whole technical side of things where, we can do all the reporting and analysis of IGEL endpoints, and, we've bought into your app ecosystem as well. So, just curious though, as we said, we've got this partnership, but is there anything within that where, is there a pain point where we haven't quite addressed yet from either perspective?
Yeah. Liquidware's been a great partner, a faithful partner, engaged with us all the time ever since I've been here. I've been here almost 6 years now. So, communication lines are great with you all. You guys are willing to do and try things first in a sense. And that's why that Pioneer App of the Year was so integral to us as we rolled out our app portal, right? Obviously, the most important thing for an app portal is to have apps in the portal. And you guys raised your hand, and you did a lot of the painful work with our initial SDK that we were working through as well with our team in Augsburg, Germany. So you guys made it through a bunch of back and forth, and we were really excited to have you guys be first and have the app in there. I think we got to get more of them up there, right? I know we've got Stratosphere up there. I think some of the unmet, customer pain points, it's not really our issues, meaning us in Liquidware, right? I think there's the the lazy dinosaurs out there that are slow to move, right? They resent change. Mm-hmm.
I think you're right. And it's something I've kind of been looking into. It's like, if we've got all these different terms within the industry, such as DEX and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I've been talking to like some of our kind of key customers, and it's not really a thing. These terms that these industry analysts, but it turns out that if you actually talk to customers, they're like, no, not really.
That's so funny.
So it's interesting that you need to meet customers where they are, and I suppose that's one of the things I find with all technology is that you meet customers where you are, then you have to help them move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great sentiment there. Yeah, help them and guide them, show them the way, be patient with them.
But don't be critical or kind of talk down to them. You meet them where they are, because that's just where they are for whatever circumstances, and then you help guide them and nurture them to move forward. And I think that's what we all do as technology vendors.
We sure do. And I think there's this sentiment, in addition to the lazy dinosaurs, if you will, there's that we always did it this way thinking. So sometimes some change needs to happen internally, right? Or what we're seeing too, like, or a critical event happens, right? Ransomware, they get hit, and now they have the fire drill, and they have to change something, right? Whatever that change might be, which I think is it's driven a lot of attention to IGEL. We've got a lot of customers that they'll get a ransomware event and IGEL's running. It might be the smaller piece of their estate, but it's running. And it gets that CIO's attention. Hey, what's that over there? Why is that working? So that's helped us a ton to grow, right? And that's why we tell a lot of these customers, right, around security. Hey, we reduced attack surface. We give you a disaster recovery, scenario where you can be up and functioning and running again within minutes, and so on. With our DR solutions that we're rolling out here today, and we also ask them too, like, why would you consider an endpoint operating system from your VDI vendor, right? Like, how does that make sense to you, or does it make sense? Where this is all we focus on, right? Is the endpoint, locking it down, very secure, right, and keeping you safe. So, yeah, I think there's, as security today will always be a big thing, right? It's not a matter of will I get attacked? It's a matter of when, and then do I have a plan?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And as we, both know, security in terms of IT budgets, security is always top of the budget. So, exactly. So obviously one of the biggest things that's kind of happening in IT at the moment is around Windows 11, and Windows 10 is becoming end of life pretty soon, in October, in fact. So only a couple of months away. And it's one thing we're definitely seeing a lot of, and Stratosphere is being used to assess all these various different systems, and obviously one of the alternatives to upgrading to Windows 11 is switching to an OS such as IGEL. And I presume you're seeing a lot of customers kind of facing that challenge at the moment.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we've been talking about this to our customer base and prospects for a year and a half plus, and it's getting louder and louder as we get closer to that October timeline for end of support, or you have to pay for enhanced support and so on with Microsoft, right? But yeah, it's a really good question, and something that we're focused on, and we're focused on it with our partners such as Liquidware, right, and others, even some of the hardware vendors, right, where they know that there's an opportunity there for them to assist a customer that has hardware that can't run, Windows 11 for various reasons. It could be the configuration, it could be the TPM chip that's not there, right, and that sort of thing. So
could just be the CPU. It's not one of the supported versions. Like I had a laptop. I went into the registry and changed something and was able to upgrade it to Windows 11, but you can't do that in an enterprise estate.
Exactly. Yeah, that's tactical. That'll take a while. I think, what
exactly.
we've been talking about is OS 12, right? OS 12 on the endpoint. You run you connecting to 365 or a cloud PC.
Mm-hmm.
You're delivering the critical applications using FlexApp. FlexApp delivering the critical apps to those users on Windows 365. It's a perfect way, and it's a very quick way. And Microsoft is endorsing this, right? Myself and a few of us just came back from Redmond 2 weeks ago, where we had deep discussions around helping them upgrade customers to Windows 11, in the cloud.
Yeah. And we just had yesterday the announcement about Windows Cloud apps, and FlexApp are a perfect example of how you can deliver a cloud app. So they made the announcement, and it was ourselves as part of the whole app attach program. So I think you're right on the money there. There is alternatives to just simply upgrading the laptop from Windows 10 to Windows 11, and utilizing something like IGEL and being kind of more flexible, because people work from everywhere. They're not just stuck to one device. They're accessing it from. So yeah.
And part of our, I'll say, philosophy has been over the years, Windows is a great operating system. It's been around forever. It supports so many things, right? Peripherals, applications, and so on, but run it in the cloud, right? Run it there. And if you are running it there, why do you want to run it on the endpoint too? Why do you want to manage it in two spots, right? Yeah. So manage it there, keep it safe, keep it locked down there. Let IGEL be that lockdown, small, thin, purpose-built endpoint that's accessing your critical business apps that are running on Windows. And then, obviously, Liquidware FlexApp is delivering those. So, when we were out there, I don't know if you have a feel for this, they gave us a number as to how many Windows 10 devices they think are still out there in the wild. Do you have a feel for what that number would be?
It's a lot. It's millions.
75 million is
75 million. Yeah. Still.
That are still out there. Yeah. Hardware concern. I mean, and Windows 11's been out how long? I've been running it 3 years.
Easily. Yeah.
So there's, and we've got some customers that are their apps, right, that are running Windows 98 because the app requires it, and they can't run it on Windows 10 or Windows 11. So yes, 75 million, James. That's a big pool that we.
That's a hell of a lot. So I have a question around. You were talking about older Windows applications and operating systems. You guys brought out a hypervisor. So crazy. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about the idea behind that and kind of the use case? Because
sure.
When I heard about that at Now and Next, I was like, they've brought out what? It's like, they're an operating system. Why are they bringing out a hypervisor? So
great question. I know. It stymied a few of us internally too. When we heard about it a year and a half ago at one of our strategy and focus days, that this was being looked at kind of a skunks works and worked on, it was like, wow, same reaction. Why are we doing that? And then it was like, wow, if we do that, you can do this, and you can do this, and you can do that, and you can do this. So the use cases just kept swelling. But we did have some feedback from some of our IGEL Ready partners around application delivery and old application support, right? One of them manages ATM machines around the globe, and that ATM is running an app that is running on Windows 98, and they had no visibility into that ATM machine, meaning they didn't know if it was up or down, if it was functioning properly, that sort of thing, if it had been tampered with. So the idea was, hey, I can run IGEL OS 12, run that Windows 98 app on that ATM, and now with the benefits of the UMS, the management system in OS 12, I can reboot it, I can look at it, I can shadow it, I can push upgrades to it, I can stop it and start it, and that sort of thing. So that was the initial, was from one of our highly valued partners that said, hey, we've got this scenario, and we don't know what to do. So that's what drove the hypervisor, let's just say, inventions, if you will. It is an endpoint hypervisor. We're not looking to go into the server hypervisor business, right? But it's an endpoint hypervisor that can run an application, right? Specific, and you can have multiple hypervisors on OS 12, right? So it can help in many ways, even around security and sandboxing. So that was the gist of it. I'd be interested to hear if you think it's something that will be accepted and adopted.
I think so, because as you said, there's so many of these legacy applications and legacy operating systems still, and I think I was reading something the other day about US air traffic control is running Windows 95 and with disks, and I nearly had it. I was like, what? It's like,
yes. Yeah, so you're right. I saw that.
I think you should get on to them straight away, Jim, and tell them this is not secure.
Hilarious.
And
they're buying 8-inch floppies on eBay.
Exactly. Oh my word! I was like, hold on, what year? Is this 2025? Seriously?
It's just crazy.
It's crazy. And it's all of these highly regulated areas where they're running them, and they must be paying Microsoft an absolute small fortune.
Yeah, a fortune, the maintenance going.
And it's just, I think it's a wider psyche thing about just inertia, and that's what we as technology vendors fight most of the time is, well, this is how we did it and we're just going to keep doing that, and getting them to try something new it can be really difficult. I think it's one of the biggest challenges with most companies is that no, it's done this way. But that one, as I said, I was just reading that, or one of my friends sent it to me, and I'm like, what? It's like crazy.
That's pretty cool that you would be, I'll just use the word astonished by this, because it is somewhat groundbreaking to do that, right? And it's part of our overall solution. We launched something in Miami at our Now and Next event. We call it the Adaptive Secure Desktop, and the IMH, the IGEL Managed Hypervisor, is one way to deliver applications, right? So if you imagine the desktop, right, you can have VDI apps, you could have progressive web apps, right, running G Suite or local Teams or local Zoom, right, as a local app that's not consuming bandwidth. Then we have like web apps and browser-based apps, right, as well as native Linux apps. We're seeing more and more native Linux apps now that companies are running on IGEL OS locally, and then you have the hypervisor, right? So there's 5 different app types that we support, and you can mix and match them based on that user's persona, right? So it's just, again, more choice for the customer, and really to continue on in that security mentality, right? Where we're going to run these things, but we're going to make sure your devices and your endpoints are secure.
Yeah, that's really cool. So we've talked about past technologies. I want to switch focus a little bit and talk about future. Obviously, AI is huge. We're seeing it everywhere. And I just wondered, I presume IGEL, I'm not asking you to reveal what you guys are doing, but I presume it is something you're looking to integrate into IGEL. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, if you're not looking at how you can embrace IA, right, as a tech company, you're going to get left in the dust, right? Regardless of what your technology is today. So I will say, though, before I answer that question, I'm still fighting back and forth with my father, on who put the AI in Airdo. Was it him or was it me? So we're arm wrestling over that one, James. That's my dad joke for the podcast today.
That's very good.
Yeah, so it was a milestone for us, right? Working with Lenovo, as I mentioned earlier, we work with the hardware vendors very closely on chipsets and that sort of thing, and what they're going to be coming out with, 12, 18 months from now, so we can be sure that we're going to take advantage of those. Initially, looking at MPU utilization or usage, on the endpoint has been around some of the local redirection things, right? So can we offload audio? Can we offload video? And that sort of thing. So those are the initial things we're looking at in a VDI environment. Let's run that locally. Obviously, regardless if you're running ChatGPT or Gemini or whichever one you might be using, right? If we could have those if we could have those chat functions or those AI functions executing local, you're going to get a better user experience, right, than going back and forth across to the cloud. So that's an early sort of a look at it, right? We're also looking, we've without divulging too much, I will say that we're in discussions with Qualcomm. So we're working with them at the chip level, perspective around different chipsets, like different CPUs, right? We're looking to make some more announcements around AI, embracing AI on Qualcomm chipsets. So wherever devices might have those certain chipsets, we'll be able to take advantage of that, as well as, like, without saying too much again, Qualcomm has a very, I'll say, strong play with the ARM processor, right? And that's about as much as I can say there. Up until today, we've been x86 AMD forever. But this is our shift towards IoT and OT, right? So as we embrace, VDI and progressive web apps, right, we see a lot of opportunity, with the Johnson Controls and the Honeywells and the Siemens around OT and operational technology, where we can do some things with a headless OS that could be running on a different chipset. So at a high level, that's where we're working.
Yeah. No. I know, you can't divulge too much, and obviously MPUs becoming the new CPU, and we're going to see that. So you can expect a lot to happen around that. So just to kind of finish up and close, I just have a couple of quick fire questions. So in terms of the partnerships you forged, what was your proudest one that since you've joined IGEL?
Oh, the partnerships. Yeah, that's a great question. Wow, there's been so many. I think what I would have to say, again, not to pick a specific partner, but I think coming here in 2019 and creating the IGEL Ready program, from scratch, and then launching that in early 2020, which we all know was COVID times, and having
I joined in March 2020.
Yeah, you did. Great timing, James. And you never got to meet anybody, right?
No, me and Divya joined, I think, within the space of a week between each
other. Yes. Poor Divya. Poor James. Yeah. That was amazing times as we look back at how that all went down, and then to launch a program. And now it's 5 years in, and we've got 100+ partners, and it's growing, and it really sets us apart from a lot of what we used to call our competition. They just didn't have that ecosystem support that we had. And I do have to give a lot of credit to our team in Germany that was doing this before I joined, and in a less formal way, less programmable way, right? If that's a word, programmatical. There you go. Way where they just had relationships, with Citrix and VMware, Microsoft, because of the protocols and so on, and now growing that up. But answering your question specifically about the Proudest, I think when I joined here, we had hardware, and we were in heated competition with the likes of Lenovo, HP, LG, Dell, and on and on and on, right? And now those guys are partners, right? We were able to tell them we're exiting hardware. We were able to get them to really believe us. We're exiting hardware, and it's going to take some time, multiple meetings with them and conversations and so on, to now where they embrace us, right? They embrace IGEL as a very important operating system, right? On dozens of devices. Initially, it was 1 or 2 in 2020 and 2021. And now some of these vendors have 12, 14, 15 devices that are preloaded from their factory with IGEL OS on it. So that was a pretty, important move for IGEL as we exited and did that transition.
Next one's a bit lighter. What's your most overhyped word in EUC?
VDI. Yeah, because everybody has a different definition for it, I think,
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've gone from server-based computing, terminal services, to VDI, to DaaS, to we'll have something else, cloud desktops. It's still someone. It's something running on someone else's server. It doesn't matter where it is. So
isn't that crazy? VDI, and the other word it's 2 words that I don't know if they're overused or overhyped. I just don't like to hear them. Is USB redirection.
Oh God.
Yeah, because you never know.
I've had some absolute nightmares with USB redirection back in my days when I was a Citrix consultant. Getting that to work sometime was spent days with printers and all scanners and label printers. They were the worst. Yeah.
Label print, speech mics. On headsets,
that
sort of
speech
stuff.
mics, speech mics, which had software, which had a dongle you to plug into the Citrix server.
There you go.
Yeah,
crazy. I don't like that word.
Yeah. So, is there a book or a podcast that you're really, which really kind of was, made a valuable kind of impact on you?
Yeah, I listen to a lot of different things over time. I don't listen to the same ones over and over. same podcasts. I listened to several. I listened to many. Back when we did our Disrupt event in Nashville the first time, I don't know what year that was. We had a gentleman there, James Lawrence, and he has a book called Redefine Impossible. And James Lawrence is known here in the States as the Iron Cowboy. And he's the gentleman that did 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 days. And I'm probably
tired just thinking about that, Jim.
Oh, yeah. But when you read the book around Redefine Impossible and the things, I won't say things, the problems and the suffering that he had to deal with to get through, to do it, compared to what we do every day, it's huge, right? And what we have to go through. So pushing through, not giving up, right? Staying on task, having a team. He was, having a team help you, not to be proud, like, hey, I got this, I can do this. I'm the general here, I can figure this out, but not being so proud that you won't take advice, right, from the team that you've surrounded yourself with.
Yeah, I think that's a great lesson for anyone. You should never be afraid to ask for help and or to delegate to utilize the team that you're on. It's not a sign of weakness, in my opinion. It's quite the other. In fact, it's people who should know when to delegate, when to ask for help, because otherwise you just feel swamped and it just things can go wrong. But that's a good recommendation, and I'm going on holiday soon, so I will put that on my list for what I'm. There you go. So, Jim, it has been an absolute pleasure. It's always great spending time with you. I'm really looking forward to now and next. I nearly called it Disrupt. I'm sorry. I'm really looking forward to in Frankfurt from the 4th to the 6th.
Early on. Yeah, 4th through 6th in Frankfurt. New city for us. We moved it from Munich to Frankfurt, bigger venue. So more breakout sessions, a lot more value. Yeah, be good to see you there.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait for it. So thanks very much for being on the podcast, and we will see everyone on the next episode. Thanks.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it.